Welcome back, WNST, Tassel, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Still broadcasting in high-quality mono sound at AM 1570. Make sure you're setting your dial accordingly through this holiday season. We had the Crab Cake Tour last week over in Dundalk with some great old friends. I hope everybody's checking that out. All are brought to you by the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with our friends at Goodwill and Window Nation. As we end the week, we say Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, all that great stuff. Dennis Koulatsos joins us. He'll be back here on Thursday and again on Sunday. We got a Christmas Eve matchup with the Atlanta Falcons. But Dennis, what a weekend. I'm wearing, just so you know, you asked me a few years ago, you're like, I'm going to get you some Coons gear. And I said, well, just get me one long sleeve, one short sleeve, make one red, one blue. Blah, blah. You wind up getting me like a Houston Oiler color one that winds up being Team Argentina. Wow. And at the same time, the Houston Oilers, my Oilers, it may have been your Oilers as well, your Earl Campbell, but I'm going more my Warren Moon Oilers. They had the demons exorcised this weekend by no less something that makes you very, very happy that the worst give up, the worst comeback orchestrated in the history of the National Football League now belongs to the Irsay family. So I'm trying to, I'm even eating corn baddies here. I mean, this is Greek Christmas coming early for both of us, I think, Dennis.
Yeah, Lionel Messi getting his World Cup victory finally, right? One of the greatest of all time. The Irsays losing in a historic fashion to the Vikings. I was at work and I couldn't believe it. I glanced at the score. It was 33-0. I'm like, okay. And one of my guys an hour later started hooting and hollering that the Vikings came back. I'm like, get out of here. It's not Halloween. It's not April Fool's, right? It's not a joking type of a day. So I checked the score and lo and behold, there it was. Just an unbelievable weekend with the Patriots losing to the Raiders on the last play of the game. And of course, Ravens Twitter hell bent on getting Greg Roman fired, or so it seems. Lots of storylines, Nestor, for sure.
I've been back and forth with Luke. Luke and I got into a back and forth, and it ended with Merry Christmas, and he's still Deacon Jones and Uncle Luke and all that. But we got in the middle of this, and listen, Chad Steele is going to give me back my media pass by the end of this segment, okay? And I'm not even taking an argumentative position on this, but here's the position on this. When Eric DeCosta drafted Bateman, he believed Bateman and Hollywood Brown would both be here for a number of years. I think they really believed that they would be able to pass the ball, keep guys happy, Stanley would be healthy, Dobbins would be effective in the Ray Rice kind of effective way. They gave money to Andrews. They gave money to Stanley. They had Lamar on cheap money, right? And an extra year of Lamar, right? So the way this thing was pieced together in signing Zeitler and all of that, I'm talking about a year ago now, but yeah, I'm talking before Dobbins ripped his knee up. I'm talking training camp last year when they believed Stanley was coming back, right? When they had all of this together, Greg Roman was not the village idiot. When you have players, healthy players, you believe Lamar's still going to be healthy in week 15 when he runs into linebackers 12 weeks in a row. Ideologically with this was supposed to be, happy times, Camelot, as we would say, right? It has not been that in any way in regard to health of the quarterback, health of the left tackle, now health of the tight end, certainly the health of the wide receiver. The other wide receiver wanted out. Like, this isn't what Greg Roman was signing up for a year and a half ago.
No, he wasn't. And I think you, Luke, and I were on the same page in terms of letting go Hollywood Brown and getting value for him. But I also thought that you, Luke, and I agreed that they should have replaced Hollywood Brown. I'm looking at George Pickens's statistics right now: 42 catches, 643 yards, 2 touchdowns. Perhaps the Ravens should have traded up 7 spots to get him versus taking the flyer on David Ojabo. Now, David Ojabo may very well end up having a much better pro career than George Pickens. But the problem with letting go Hollywood Brown was they never replaced him. We talked about this in the preseason, Nestor. What would happen if Rashad Bateman suffered a season-ending injury, right? And it happened, and they had no one behind him. So this offense is a mess. They call a timeout, and then they get a delay penalty, Nestor, after calling a timeout.
And they blamed it on the headsets.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. Never blame, complain, or explain because you look so weak. When John Harbaugh was asked about the play calling, he says, I'm not in on that deal. Well, what do you mean you're not in that deal, Chief? I mean, you're the CEO, which is fine, but that's you still have to have your hand on the rudder. You just can't have blind loyalty and trust in your coordinators and your assistants. At some point, you got to interject yourself and freaking lead. You're getting paid a ton of money. I think John's become a spectator at the games, Nestor, and not an active participant. That's my impression.
Well, they had a wide receiver throwing a pass into the
Come
end
on
zone
now.
a week and a half ago, right?
And
Like
he was
literally.
and he was okay with that, but the fact he hasn't been okay with this offense looking putrid, not being able to get the playoff for the last 4 years, speaks volumes about him. He needs to tighten up. He needs to take more control of the team. He needs to get involved with the play calling. You are the head coach, sir. That 4th-and-1 play against the Browns, I had no problem with going for it. I did have a problem with the call. There were much better calls they could have made, and the fact that J.K. Dobbins got 0 carries in the fourth quarter, and then Gus Edwards got 1 carry in the fourth quarter when they had it gone for like a $1.75 in the first three. I mean, come on, man, you gotta play to your strengths, right? It's not rocket science, and this just speaks to maybe Greg Roman doesn't have a feel for the game. He's gotten stale like Wake Martindale, and I don't know what they're gonna do, but they better do it quickly.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Tyler Huntley wouldn't be playing in this league with any other team or any other offense. And I mean, he's a nice kid, like all that, but then to let him throw the ball 30 times like that,
Ah,
that didn't make any sense. And I thought to myself, him running into linebackers, as we learned the previous week, was also not a good idea, right?
no.
Well, he's just like Lamar. We're going to do it just like Lamar. Yeah, we're going to do it just like Lamar. So we don't want him to run anywhere. He's not that great a runner. I mean, he's not. And at the end of the day, you're going to get him killed. So these last 2 weeks have been very much finger in the dike and
Mm.
very much let's just not lose, right? I guess the disappointing part of the Cleveland game is just how bad they looked, right?
Ah.
And how they did it left-handed to some degree, trying to throw the football with a backup quarterback.
The other piece of it, this Nestor, is Tyus Bowser. He puts on his Instagram story 5 pieces of loose leaf paper with the words written on it, "Fire Greg Roman." Looks to me like they were taken at the castle at one winning drive. Why would Tyus Bowser put it out there on social media? Got my head scratching this morning.
Look, the social media thing. I remember taking a long walk with a head coach back in 2009, who's no longer a head coach in the league, and he said to me, "This Twitter thing, my players aren't going to be doing this. I mean,
Right.
they're not going to be any of this." Um, I think controlling what these guys do when you have the quarterback of the team on draft night tweeting out WTF, who is his own agent.
Particularly when he knew this was not a surprise to him. Him and Hollywood Brown were best friends. He knew the trade was happening, Nestor. So him feigning surprise also was a bad look because he knew.
Well, him holding up a sign that says "Pay me more money" in an alcove in the middle of the night after a game. I mean, I don't. We're getting closer to this, right? And right now, Dennis, I don't want you to bet me a new car at Coons Ford that there won't be a parade, but I think you'd be willing to bet me a new car at Coons Ford there won't be a parade right now, or buy the insurance on that, or whatever that would be. Because if there's no parade here, what is this going to smell like on January 16th if they lose to Nashville or Buffalo or Kansas City, or January 23rd if they make it around and they lose to Cincinnati, whatever it is? If they're not playing in championship games and playing in the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl, if they're not doing that, what will this offseason look like? Because Greg Roman's as lame duck as there is, right? I mean, I don't think Harbaugh's lame duck. I don't think Eric DeCosta's lame duck. I think they survive forever. But I don't this offseason with Lamar, I've talked to so many smart people, Pete Prisco, people attached to the game. They're just going to slap a tag on him. They're not going to give him, they're not going to give him $150 million guaranteed. They're just going to put a tag on him. He's going to play. And I'm like,
Maybe.
okay, maybe. I mean, I know you and I believe differently. I believe this could get very combustible
Yeah,
for a
he
lot of
sits.
reasons. But the main reason is they're not going to win. If they don't win the Super Bowl, this will become combustible.
Yeah, I like you. I see him sitting out, not accepting that $45 million tag price, or whatever it is. Not when he's looking for 250 million guaranteed, or whatever the number may be. But yeah, this sets up for very tumultuous, unpredictable offseason for the Baltimore Ravens. Greg Roman looks to be on his way out of here. The only question at this point is when, because again, there's things that we've seen with this offense. I mean, they're not going anywhere as constructed. Lamar Jackson coming back. I don't know what that adds to the Ravens. It certainly gives them a much better chance of winning. Clearly, they can't win without him. Clearly, also maybe perhaps it's showing up right now that he's not part of the problem, that he's part of the solution, because, and maybe he's contained by this Greg Roman offense, but the Ravens have to go and sign a proven wide receiver in the offseason. I'm not sure who's available. If they need to trade a first and a third for a proven guy, just like the Eagles did for A.J. Brown, they've got to get a wide receiver one, and hopefully that guys like Rashad Bateman actually can play several games, never mind a full season, without hitting the injury reserve list.
Well, you keep saying the same thing Luke says. We'll just go get a wide receiver. Well, who is this guy? Where are they getting him? Who is signing up to play here? And I brought this point up, and I'll bring it up with you because we like these leadership conversations. You know, I had Barry Trotz on a couple weeks ago, and he and I had a conversation about his next gig and where you take a job and why you would take a job. And I know that the Winnipeg Jets made a hell of a run at him, right? Like he's from that part of the world. He's lost a mother, his father's getting older. It's homecoming for him. It's Canada. They would pay him a phone number, right, to do it. Mm-hmm. How's he recruiting players there? How's he going to get, no matter how much, and the money's an issue in Canada, right? Like there's a Canadian problem with money as well. Recruiting players, right? Like, and we don't hear this as much, right? But in baseball, it's everything. If you stink, free agents aren't playing in Pittsburgh or Baltimore, right? You have no chance of signing Aaron Judge in baseball if you're one of those markets. Basketball, same thing, right? Like, who are the Wizards getting? Like, wait, like there has to be a consortium to take their talents to Miami in order, or go ask Oklahoma City, right? Go ask these places where they lose players, right? Hockey would be the same thing where you're like, if you can't recruit players, the NFL, you never hear that. Since Reggie White signed in Green Bay 30 years ago, where they thought they'd never get a black player, they'd never get a cold weather, we can't recruit, like all of that. I don't hear maybe Cleveland for a minute, maybe Cincinnati because of ownership or whatever. You'd say, well, they would struggle. Maybe Jacksonville, but they've signed free agents. If you have money and you have a good tax situation in Florida, you can sign players, right? The Ravens have constructed this thing, and Eric knows this, and we hear it every offseason, right? That they were going to draft wide receivers. They drafted one. He's from the same hometown. He was boys with Lamar. They ran around together, and he still didn't want to be here. He still asked out because he wanted the ball.
Yeah, it was a run-first offense. So if I'm Steve Bisciotti, what I do is one of two things. The one thing you have to look at is, has John Harbaugh run the course, let's say, of an Andy Reid in Philadelphia? Has he been there so long that things have gotten stale? That's something they'll certainly have to look at, Nestor, because Steve Bisciotti has to look at all of his options. If he does decide to stay with John Harbaugh, he should demand that John Harbaugh interviews 10, 12 of the best and brightest young offensive minds in the league. Maybe you look at the San Francisco 49ers and under Kyle Shanahan, who are his assistants. You don't let him hire somebody he's familiar with. You don't let him reach into his bag of familiar friends of the Harbaughs, right? So his job is to hire.
I don't think John can operate outside of that. I mean, I'm being really honest with you. John's got $100 million in the bank. John's going to say, I pick my coordinator. I'm telling you, I've seen John vein up about
that's a deal breaker then, because what happens is if we keep reaching back to the good old boy network, it would cause Lamar Jackson to move away from the prize versus towards the prize. Now, if you hire a young, fresh mind that can put together a dynamic passing offense. And I saw you reference the forward pass the other night on Twitter, Nestor, and rightfully so. It is very much a passing league. So if they can get a really good offensive coordinator, maybe he convinces Lamar Jackson to stay, to sign, and also that could also attract some top wide receiver talent to the Ravens, because you're right, as constructed, a run-first team, they're not going to be able to attract the right free agent wide receiver. But if you get the right offensive coordinator, then all bets are off. These receivers come back into play. But if I'm Steve Bisciotti, that's how I'm playing this thing. And it's a breaking point. If it's a breaking point with the coach, so be it. But they can't continue doing the same thing over and over again. Yes, they're good enough to make the playoffs almost every year, but can they progress with a run-first offense? They're not going to be able to bring the Lombardi home, Nestor.
Here's Dennis Koulatsos. He can bring you home from Coons Baltimore Ford over Security Boulevard with plenty of beautiful new vehicles over there for the holidays. First year, is there such a thing of like getting rid of the old year's cars? That used to be a thing, right? Like you'd have a whole
Yeah.
bunch of 22s, and we're gonna make room for the 23s, right?
Well, because of demand and scarcity, there's no such thing anymore. Now the decks got cleared out very, very fast, but it's a great time to buy vehicles. There's a thing called section179.org for all business owners. They can write off up to $1 million in vehicle purchases, and people should check with their accountant. We're selling a lot of small businesses, trucks and vans and SUVs these days because of section179.org.
179.org. See,
.org. Yep.
I learned tax structure from you and Len. It's almost like I'm becoming a grown up in my mid 50s here before it's all over with. Are these 20? These are 23s that are being made right now, right?
I've got 22s and 23s in stock right now. With
But
23s
there are
starting to
you do
trickle
have
in.
both. This is the time of the year when that happens,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Just a great time to buy a vehicle. Like I said, tax savings, check with your accountant. But if you have a small business and whatnot, you can buy vehicles right off 100% of them.
Dennis, I got to ask you bigger picture on all of this. I mean, we talk so much about off season and we're big picturing here. Beating Atlanta this week, getting Lamar back, a healthy Lamar. How important the division is at this point, Pittsburgh wise and Cincinnati. What can you just roll the ball out and beat Atlanta on Christmas Eve? I don't know that what they did
No,
last week that they could beat anybody. I mean,
no.
with the backup quarterback, they're no good. With Lamar at 80%, I don't know, but I don't expect Lamar to be pushing off and running into linebackers 13 times against the Falcons this Saturday.
No, this is the Tennessee Titans model for the last 3 or 4 years, right? You play good defense, you run the ball, you control it. It keeps bad teams in the game with you, right? That's what's happened with the Broncos, and it's going to happen with the Falcons, and it happened with the Jaguars, right? And then with good teams, you try to take them into deep water using the same methodology, and you try to drown them. The problem is though, when this team falls behind, even to a bad team like the Browns, they just don't have the weapons to come back, Nestor. And that's the problem with this offense. They have to play perfect games in the playoffs, and there's no way that they can do that. We saw the Buccaneers up 17 points against the Bengals, and of course they turned the ball over 3 or 4 times, allowed the Bengals to come back. But the Bengals look at their receivers. They have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and number one, they're Jamar Chase, and they have tight ends, and they have Joe Mixon. The Ravens just don't have an offensive firepower where they can win consistently, come back from huge deficits, right? So that's the problem with the Ravens offense as constructed. They just can't come back. Their whole game plan is so 1980-ish, and it just doesn't work anymore in the modern day NFL.
Well, they're 9-5, and it feels like
Okay, because they use that formula, right? Ball control. You got a quarterback that's mercurial and generational, and you have a good defense that's gotten better with the addition of Roquan Smith, and now of course we have Calais Campbell and we have Marcus Peters. We don't know what their outlook is going forward, but again, it's so old school and it works. It works to a point, but when you play better teams, and they've had one of the weakest schedules in the NFL this year, right? So they're not going to apologize for it either. But let's look at the Bengals finishing schedule, and guess what? They're winning. They're playing better. They're battle tested. So the last game of the season against the Bengals doesn't look too good from this angle so far, Nestor.
well, you can look at the Bengals' first half on Sunday and say, I mean, I
Mm.
was thinking that for a little while, and then you see the firepower they have
Oh.
offensively and wonder how you're going to contain that all day 2 weeks from now. Certainly not the way the Ravens are playing right now. Dennis will be here on Thursday.
And they're playing good defense. That's the other part too. See, it's complementary. They're playing good defense and have a dynamic, explosive offense. The Ravens do not have a dynamic, explosive offense.
Yeah, it's tough watching the Bills and the Chiefs and the Bengals. And now they spread all these games out, right? Like this weekend, it starts Thursday, and they play right through Christmas Eve, right through the Ham, right through a Christmas Story, all day Sunday, 3 games on Sunday. I noticed they play Sunday games, Miami, LA, and Arizona. They're like, well, it's empty all the time anyway. Nobody will notice, just have them play on Christmas Day. They won't come, but no one will care. But we'll be watching this weekend. The NBA tees it up on Christmas Day. We got bowl games happening, but nothing quite like the great Messi, right? I mean,
Mm.
I wore the blue and white of Argentina for you, Dan, is what I did.
What a great was that a great game or what? That game had everything: drama, a huge comeback, penalty kicks, people crying and whatnot. It was the best final I've ever seen in my life.
Everybody said that instantly, right? Like, I guess there's something about Messi. There's something about the sport itself. There's something about Argentina since 1986 and Maradona and other teams have won, right? France has
Yes.
won twice. Italy's won, right? Like, Spain's won. Like Brazil's won. Brazil won
Hey,
here.
look.
So yeah,
France was quiet for close to 80 minutes, and they scored twice in 90 seconds. Anything and everything could happen. It was fun to watch, and I was standing up the entire time in the second half.
yeah, it was a lot of emotion involved there too. So I love that. Makes me want a deep, rich Malbec and a nice steak from Argentina. I should have gone to New York this week. I knew that. Dennis Koulatsos is here. He will be there for the holidays. Hey, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I
You as well.
appreciate all you do for us on all year long and the shows and all that stuff. But certainly the sharing of the Corrimbietes
Oh,
is that's the
unbelievable.
most important part, that we share a love of Greek pastries this time of year, Dan.
100%. My aunt and uncle brought me some baklava the other day, some guanabietas, and patted my belly. That's, look, this isn't helping. But so January 1st, we start on the diet, but not before.
Baklava is a 365 thing, though, right? The cornbiettes are more associated with Christmas, like
Very much so.
fruitcake, right?
Yeah, very much so. Just
It's like
really
Greek fruit
delicious.
cake, except it tastes good.
Much better. Much better.
Dennis Koulatsos is over Coons Baltimore Forward. You can follow him at D Koulatsos Show out on Twitter, and Dennis Koulatsos as well as the Sunday Sports Boys. We'll be back on Sunday for Christmas Day. Dennis, I found that Tony Saragusa, we lost him this year. I'm trying to do a little retrospective next week. You'll hear a lot of different things, best of during the course of Christmas week. But I found that Tony Saragusa Christmas album, and he has a reading of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" Goose style. So I think I'm going to try to get that onto the
Nice.
airwaves here, and hope everybody has a beautiful, beautiful holiday. We will be celebrating the proper way from Wise Markets, kielbasa and sauerkraut, and hopefully I can get the 400 points to get a free ham. I'm Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking holidays, and BaltimorePositive.com. Stay with us.